What's up everyone, I'm Brandon from the Ashen Path. Today I want to talk a little bit about crafting, but honestly, this is mostly going to be about enchanting and no rest for the wicked because that's where I see the most confusion. Quick disclaimer before we start, everything you're about to see or hear is accurate as of February 10th, 2025, but this is an early access game, so if you're watching this 6 months from now and something's changed, yeah, that's early access. Alright, let's get into it. I want to start with crafting for one reason. Facets. Every piece of gear you find or craft has a chance to roll a facet. Facets usually come with a positive and a negative, and what you need to know about them is you can't change them. Once they're there, they're there. So if you're trying to really min-max your gear and you want a very specific facet, that usually means you're crafting or farming the same piece of gear over and over again. Let me show you what I mean. Here are 5 of the same armor pieces, the same base, just different facets. You can see here, they're all very different. Even this one doesn't even have one, so that's an option also. Is this something you have to do? No. But if you're the type of player who wants things just right, the option's there, and that's why crafting matters before we even talk about enchanting. White gear is just common gear, nothing special. It does have 4 open gem slots, which means you can fully customize it at the enchanter Eleanor. Most people kind of ignore white gear, but honestly, early to mid game, this can be a totally fine option, especially if you just want control without dealing with the negative. Blue, or magic gear, comes with up to 3 enchantments and 1 open gem slot. A lot of people end up using blue gear in a couple of slots because it can roll with different enchantments than the plagued gear. Purple, or plagued gear, is where things start to get a little different. You get 5 enchantment slots, which sounds great, until you realize one of those is always the negative. Yes, you're getting 4 positives instead of 3, but if you ignore that negative enchant, you can absolutely wreck your entire build. Ask me how I know. Gold, or unique gear, varies a bit from the other 3 rarity types. They roll with their own specific enchantments which can't be swapped out with using embers. Unique weapons also roll with their own specific runes that can't be swapped out. You can, however, improve the values of the enchantments with radiant embers. If you want to understand enchanting, you have to understand embers. There are 8 different embers, and each one does something specific. Read their descriptions, it'll save you a lot of wasted resources. Let's start with Fallen Embers, because this is the one people mess up a lot. Fallen Embers do 2 things. They can add an enchantment to magic or plague gear that isn't full yet, or they can re-roll an existing enchantment. Adding an enchantment, totally fine, that's a good use for them. Re-rolling positive enchants, honestly, just don't. You're rolling blind, you don't know what you're getting, and most of the time you're not rolling into something better anyway. Where Fallen Embers actually shine is re-rolling negatives. If you're using plagued gear, you're always going to have a negative. You can't remove it completely, but you can turn a build breaking negative into something that's just mildly annoying. Awakening Embers are simple. All they do is take a white piece of gear and turn it into a blue piece of gear. Super easy. Corrupting Embers, they do almost the same thing. They turn a white piece of gear into a purple piece of gear. Using Essence Embers and No Rest for the Wicked is a 2-step process. They allow you to take 1 enchantment from 1 piece of gear and apply it to another piece of gear. The catch is, the donor gear gets destroyed, so you can only take 1 enchantment from 1 piece of gear. When I say it's a 2-step process, let me explain. Once you use an Essence Ember on your donor gear, let's say for example you want to take burn damage here, right? So we'll use the Essence Ember on the burn damage, like this. It tells you that the item will be destroyed. You click confirm, and then you get a charged Essence Ember with the enchantment on it that you just took off from the other piece of gear. So once again we use the Ember, and we go to the armor that we want to add the enchantment to. As you can see, the donor gear was destroyed. It's no longer in my inventory. Select our armor, and then we select the enchantment we want to replace. And that's it. Plague damage is now burn damage. It's as simple as that. Do this multiple times on the same piece of gear using different enchants, and you suddenly have yourself a piece of gear that you actually want. Alright, let's get into Radiant Embers. Radiant Embers are used to improve the effectiveness of the enchantments on your gear. go to the example of gear that we used earlier, and we select it. We can scroll through the enchantments and decide which enchantment we want to use the Radiant Ember on. Let's go to burn damage that we used earlier, and we can see that it would increase the burn damage from 27% to 31%. The lower number, 10% to 25%, is the effectiveness of the enchant. It can go all the way up to 100%. Each radiant gem increases that value by 15% most of the time. If that value is already 90%, it will only increase the value by 10%. It cannot go above 100% total. The Sublime Ember. I recommend you read its description very carefully. Sublime Embers are used to exalt your gear. Each piece of gear can be exalted 4 times maximum. After you use a Sublime Ember, you can no longer swap the enchantments. You cannot use Fallen Embers, and you cannot use Essence Embers any longer. You can, however, improve the value of the enchantments with Radiant Embers. So keep that in mind before you exalt your gear. So to use a Sublime Ember, back to our example armor, you can see that I've already exalted it 1 time. The exalted value is completely random. It picks one of the 4 positive enchantments, or 3 positive enchantments if you're using magic gear, at random. As you can see on the top, damage increased by 21% for 10 seconds after staggering an enemy. That value was hit, as you can tell, indicated by it being yellow. This piece of gear can be exalted up to 3 more times. As an alternative to Sublime Embers, you can talk to the Watcher in the Rookery. He should have an option called Exalt Items. It works exactly the same as Sublime Embers, except that there's a cost. The cost is the material you get from the monsters and bosses from the plagued areas. The higher number of times the item has been exalted, the more items it costs. Finally, I want to talk about Void Embers. Void Embers are used to revert any enchanted gear back to its white common base. For example, if I wanted to use this Void Ember on this Ogre's Club, we can look at the Ogre's Club, and we see that it is now back at its common base. You'll also notice that it kept its facet. That's where these are most useful. So you're not re-rolling a piece of gear that you didn't like the exalts on over and over again trying to get the facet again. It actually leaves the facet there, so you're good. So if I used the Void Ember on my exalted staff, it would return it back to its base, but it would keep its razor facet. So I wouldn't have to go craft another staff, however many times it took to get the razor facet on there. I'm going to enchant a piece of gear step by step to show you how it's done. I'm going to start with this Plagued Armor of the Cleansed. I already have several donor pieces here that I'd like to take enchantments off of. Keep in mind that these donor pieces will be destroyed, and we can only take 1 enchantment per piece of gear to put it here. Okay, so to start, we will go to our Essence Embers. Use the Essence Embers, and I want lightning damage here. When you're looking for your enchants, you want to get them as close as possible to their best rolls, so that you don't have to waste Radiant Embers later to bump them up. So lightning damage here, it's already at its maximum. So I'm going to take this lightning damage. Yes, confirm. And I'm going to put it on my Armor of the Cleansed, which will replace the ice damage with. Now, I want use another Essence Ember, and from this piece, I want critical hit chance. Its maximum roll is also 10%, so I'm not going to have to use any radiance to push that up either. So I'll take that, destroy the gear, use the charged essence, and put it here over the frozen. again, back to another essence ember. Basically, this is just doing this over and over. It's really, really simple once you get the hang of it, or maybe even hear it for one time. It's not difficult at all. So again, we're going to use the essence ember. I want damage resistance. Again, 10% is the max roll already. So I will destroy that. And you'll notice on the charged essence that I didn't mention earlier, that under armor here, it says damage resistance increased by 10% of current durability. You'll also notice that it's the same color as the plagued armor that it came off of. So if you pull an enchantment from a blue or magic piece of gear, it will be blue there instead, and you can't mix and match those. They have to come from the same rarity of gear, otherwise it won't work. So we'll use this and go to our armor, replace the elemental resistance here. Easy peasy. And one last time, use the essence ember, and we are going to take the durability increase. This is the only one that I'm going to have to use radiance on to improve, because it is not maxed out. It maxes out at 100, and I don't have anything with durability increase of 100. So this is what we're using. So I'm taking this and I'm destroying, and I will use it to replace this max health enchant here. So now I have the gear as I want it, with the exception of that negative roll. Damage resistance by 40% if not at full focus. I don't want damage resistance reduced by 40% ever. So we'll scroll over, check out our fallen embers, and we will re-roll this into something more tolerable. 14 focus on damage taken. Nah. Max focus reduced. Nah. Equipment load reduced. Also nah. Again with the damage taken. Max stamina reduced by 15%. I'm a mage. I don't swing my weapon, and I will be using blink mostly for my evasion. So max stamina doesn't matter to me. So as I said earlier, it's just going to be really more of an annoyance than a build breaking negative. And that's something you have to look out for. Now that we've finished that, we have our enchantments on. Now we are going to head up to the rookery and do some exalting. Okay, as I said earlier, while exalting the gear, you can't swap the enchantments out after the gear has been exalted, even one time. It's completely random at what it hits, but we have all of our enchantments in the right place, so we don't have to worry about swapping them out anymore. We have the right enchantments on there. So I'm going to go ahead and exalt this and see where it hits. Critical hit chance, that's not bad. Lightning damage, also not bad. I really prefer the next two to hit one of those. We'll see how it goes. Durability increase, no dice. And you can see that I am out of husk and marrow. So for the last one, go into the inventory, and I will use a sublime ember. And you'll see that it has the same effect. Also hit durability again. So that'll help our damage resist, but not so much our damage. That's okay though. We didn't get it exactly how we wanted it, but that's what void embers are for. Alright guys, that's it. That's all there is to enchanting. If I helped you out or you learned something today, drop me a like and a follow, and feel free to comment what you would like to see from me next.